Hello everybody, Benjamin Magnus here, and welcome to episode 2 of Comet Sighted. Today we'll be discussing Imperator Rome Development Diary number 2 from the 4th of June, 2018. As usual, we're going to start off by simply reading off the Dev Diary, and today it is all about the map for Imperator Rome. This is arguably the biggest and most detailed map we have ever made for a game ever. More is not always better though, as of which the original release of Hearts of Iron 3 is a great example. Oh no, don't badmouth my beloved Hoi 3. We have taken good care into making a game where you can have interesting situations both while playing a small state and while playing a vast empire. In various games before, we've worked with organizing entities on the map in various ways, with states being the groups of provinces tracing back to Vicky 1. In Imperator, we have been designing the game from the ground up with 2 layers of interaction. The smallest part of the map is what we call a city, which corresponds to a province from previous games. A city holds a city or village or metropolis, a bunch of pops, produces a trade good, and may have a few buildings. A province is usually about 10 to 12 cities, and this is the entity you interact with to control trade and assign governors to. Let us quickly compare how Sicily have been depicted in our previous games, as this is where we will take a look today. In Europa Universalis 2, Sicily has 2 provinces. In Crusader Kings 2, Sicily has 5 provinces. In Europa Universalis 4, Sicily has 3 provinces. Hearts of Iron 4, Sicily has 9 provinces. In Imperator, Sicily has 23 cities, provinces in previous games, and 4 impassable mountain areas. This creates a much more interesting military campaign and also more variety in your peacetime activities. Of course, as you would expect from a game with Rome in its title, we have the entirety of Mare Nostrum covered, but there is more to the world in the game than just that area. And with that, we'll hand the keys over to the research team. One of the major reasons behind our choice of start date, aside from being a particularly interesting period in Roman history, is the state of the successor kingdoms in the East. We will go into depth about those in another development diary, however. It is worth noting that many of our decisions to include certain territories were down to their relevance within the Hellenic world as being fascinating in their own right. Britain made up a sizable portion of historical Roman conquest and played an important part in the tin trade throughout the Bronze Age and into the Iron Age. Data on pre-Roman Britain is scarce, particularly for the period preceding 150 BCE, and some liberties have therefore been taken regarding the extrapolation of tribal territories as known to Caesar. The inclusion of southern Scandinavia, despite it being the epitome of all modern civilization, enough of that now, edited by the editor, was a calculated decision. Our start date of 304 BC places us during the migration, not to be confused with the migration period, which occurred in the 4th century AD, of the original Germanic tribes from the modern-day Scandinavia into northern and central Germany. The displacement of native inhabitants with whom we know very little, and laterally some of the Celtic tribes, occurred over the course of the next several hundred years. As with Britain, very little concrete data exists on the exact nature of the locations and names of the tribal groupings towards the beginning of this period. The recorded history of the Ethiopian region extends back farther than our timeline. However, none of the contemporary sources we were able to discover were particularly detailed regarding location data of political situation. Even now, structures built by the Demit Kingdom around 700 BC still stand, a testament to the advanced civilizations out of which the contemporaries of our start date grow. The Nile has always been the lifeblood of northeastern Africa, and we felt it was worthwhile to include as much of it as possible. The inclusion of the Indian subcontinent is something we considered as vitally necessary to complete the world that was relevant to the Hellenic era. A state of conflict has already existed for some time between the recently established Mauryan Empire and Seleucus Nicator, self-proclaimed king, by the time we begin. Greek traders have long since been visiting West Indian trading ports, trading in fabrics, gemstones, spices, and indeed many of the ancient names we have for these locations appear also in Greek. Last of all, since we have one start date, we wanted to include as many interesting things as possible. This means that we have also tried to identify interesting states that can reasonably start as subjects of others rather than directly owned by governors, both to better cover the political realities of far-off regions like northern Anatolia or Judea, and to allow the player the choice of taking over the reins of many unique polities in these regions. Over the course of development, we have used a great number of sources, texts, and maps in order to craft what we believe is an immersive living world, which is as close to history as possible. One invaluable reference tool for our Roman areas, which deserves special mention, is the Digital Atlas of the Roman Empire compiled at Lund University using data from the Plagios project, which I am unfamiliar with. Additional sources include, but are not limited to, the Schwarzburg Historical Atlas of South Asia, an Atlas of Ancient Indian History, the Perseus Digital Library, the Plagios Project, and the Pleiadius Gazetteer. It should be noted that while these have been great resources, we have sometimes had to take liberties to create as full a map as possible. As such, any errors are likely to be ours, and the reference materials we have used should not be faulted. If there's any significant reference material you believe might be relevant, we always welcome suggestions from our posters. So now that we are finished with the actual verbiage of the development diary, why don't we go into some of the media posted. Now, this is the picture that was posted with the development diary, and you can see that it is immense, the map. It is intense. There are 23 cities, and I know I'm probably going to do it in this video, is mix up cities and provinces, because in this game, cities are the smallest, workable area on the map, and provinces are what we used to call states from, like, EU4. So I know I'm going to mix them up, and I'm sure it's going to happen a lot, especially when we start playing this multiplayer with, like, members of the community and stuff like that. But we got 23 cities on here, and I don't know if each city will be a a fort that needs to be conquered, like in EU4, or if it's just something you come in and occupy. Or if you even need to, maybe you just need to get the capital of the province or something like that. We don't know. We don't know anything about warfare. We don't know anything about how integrating this area into these new areas into your empire will work. But I mean, looking at this map, I'm pretty excited about this. You can see that it's going to make the actual military game fairly interesting. There's all these tiny little places to move to. Sicily is multiple provinces, aka states. It's just... the map is going to be huge. It's massive. And even looking up into the toe of Italy here, you can see all these different little nation states just in the boot of Italy here. Just in the boot. I see 1, 2, that's definitely 3, possibly 4, possibly 5. Definitely 4, possibly 5. And then we've got, this might be this is probably Carthage. That wouldn't make sense. That would pan. I think that would make sense. This is definitely Sicily. I'm pretty sure that's Sicily. Syracuse. I'm pretty sure that's the Syracusan flag. But what I'm noticing on the map here is that, well, we've got this is definitely Carthage. And you can see that it's colored and it's got the colored border. All this area in the center here is not. It's not. It doesn't look like it's owned by anybody. If it was all owned by Syracuse, I would imagine that the border would look like this area up in here, where you got the colors, playing away from each other, which, it just looks so cool. And something I've actually wondered is if you can change the combat terrain of your cities, because you can see that there's lots of farmland in some of these cities, and lots of forests and things like hills and mountains in some of them. Obviously you wouldn't be able to remove mountains, but Romans could remove hills, and maybe creating farms would remove woodlands, stuff like that. That would be an interesting dynamic feature for the map here. But just think about this. Just Sicily could be a massive military campaign with 23 provinces, states. I did it again. 23 states. And if we actually go over to the other, this is the picture that Johan posted to his Twitter. And you can see that down here, this is one city, former province, city of Camarina in East Sicily. So we know that East Sicily is going to be a province, a governable province. And that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. There's going to be 4 mountain ranges in Sicily. Just think about that multiplied out throughout the world. How much granularity there's going to be in the military campaigns here. And something that they didn't mention that I think I just kind of blew past before, but I thought was very interesting, is that trade goods are produced in cities and trade is handled on the provincial level. So it kind of seems like you produce all these goods in your cities, and then it's kind of put into a pot, and then the pots are traded around, which is going to be very interesting. And they did specifically mention something else that was more of a historical footnote, but I'm wondering if it will actually have relevance to the game, and I hope it does, because in EU4, to a point, trade goods were kind of produced in regions that were moderately historically accurate. And some regions were more likely to produce a specific type of good. But in the ancient world, now this is we're past the Bronze Age at this point, but in the Bronze Age, tin was an extremely valuable trade resource, because tin, statistically speaking, is an extremely rare element. It's not found in very many places. It's not found in very large quantities. And in the ancient world, it was found mostly in England, really, really far away from the major empires of the world at the time, and I believe on the island of Cyprus, and I think there may have been some minor mines in Anatolia, but they specifically mentioned tin being produced in England, and I just think it would be really, really interesting and would add a really awesome trade dynamic if specific rare resources like that were tied to locations. And controlling those locations would give you, that edge up in trade and possibly military. Because in EU Rome, for instance, an area can only make heavy infantry if it had access to a specific trade good. It could only make ships if it had access to a specific trade good. And if you could only make specific units if you had access to specific trade goods, and those specific trade goods are only produced in very specific areas of the map, that is a very, very cool dynamic, I think. That would make the trade game, especially in multiplayers, so fascinating. Fighting major wars over these tiny little areas just to get that trade good, or making deals with the devils, with players you don't actually want to deal with, or could be a potential enemy in the future, just so you could get that trade good, so you could produce those units you need, or you could get that boon for your empire need. I think you guys could tell by the tone of my voice, it's something that I really hope is going to be in the game. And that's just little tiny things that I'm picking out of there. I think I might be grasping at straws, but that's me. So into the map in general, you can see that it is massive. It is granular. It's got, I think they said, more than 8,000 provinces. You can see in Sicily alone, 23 in Sicily alone, in cities. 23 cities in Sicily alone. Oh, it's something else I was wondering. I was wondering if you could destroy cities, because that would be an interesting thing. I mean, not just remove it from the map, but burn it down to the ground. Salt the earth, as it were. That was a Roman thing to do. But at the end of that's actually kind of the bulk of the Dev Diary here, goes into specifics about areas on the map. So let's see. First one is Britain. All of Great Britain is there. So we've got England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. It's all there. And that's really again fascinating to me, because we don't know much about the disposition of tribes there before Caesar showed up and invaded them several times and then took all their shit. But we do know a little bit about the Celts, and I'm trying to think about the name of the the Scottish tribes. It's right on the tip of my brain. It's right there. We know Ireland was inhabited at the time period, but we don't know much about what was there. Playing in I love the idea of going Noob Island in Imperator Rome and playing in Ireland and conquering Great Britain and fending off the Romans. That would be fun. I wanted to say Celtiberians, but that's not it. I think that's from Hispania. Oh man, it's right on the tip of my brain. I want to say it starts with a C. I don't. It's eluding me, but it's all going to be in there. We have Denmark and the southern areas of Norway and Sweden. You can even see a little tiny bit of Finland, all of the Baltics, and there's going to be Germanic tribes migrating south, which was a huge drive for conflict in the height of the Roman Empire. Was the migration of tribes moving down south and west into Europe and hitting the Roman border, and tens or hundreds of thousands of people who are of different culture and of a different language, and don't even know they're crossing a border, and oftentimes being very aggressive That was a huge drive of conflict in the Roman era, and that's gonna be great for it's probably gonna be great for like mid and late game conflict in Rome here. Scandinavia, there's going to be Ethiopian land, so all the way down to the Horn of Africa here, which is great. And the maps we saw earlier, the Nile had so many cities on it. It was so granular. It was great. All the way from the headwaters in the south all the way over to the Mediterranean. It was just jam-packed in there. I can just imagine now in like playing as a nation that just conquers the Nile and just turtles down there. I just think that would be interesting. And India. We all know that as far back as Alexander the Great and farther, that everybody knew India was there. There was Roman traders regularly traded with India. Greek traders regularly traded with India. Everybody knew it was there, and they guarded the trade routes sometimes, but in terms of how to get there, but it was there. People knew how to get there, and I'm glad that it's in the game. And the map even goes a little bit past China, and there is documented evidence of Rome having contact with China, which is pretty cool. There's actually there's a little tiny anecdote that nobody knows if it's true or not, that a cohort of Roman soldiers escaped the slaughter of Crassus's legions and were cut off from retreating back towards Rome, so they had to go east, and they ended up in China serving as mercenaries in the Chinese army. There's historical, evidence that there was. They never said they were Romans, but there were a group of soldiers who fought in close orders with large shields, and it was described as a turtle formation where they would hold the shields up over their heads. And a lot of people look at that and go, it's Roman. I mean, of course, holding a shield up over your head isn't something that's distinctly Roman, but the testudo formation was something that was pretty distinctly Roman in terms of the organization and the formation of it. So there is some evidence to support that a Roman cohort fought as mercenaries for a Chinese army. And then there was the Silk Road, and trade went back and forth and stuff like that. And Roman emissaries did go to meet in China, and Chinese emissaries did come to meet with the Romans. A lot of times, what would happen is they would get into like halfway. They would get halfway through their journey into like Persian territory, and then someone would just go, "Oh yeah, they don't want to see you. You should turn back. They're dicks." And they would just get false information about what was ahead of them on their journey, or they would go, "Oh yeah, you got like 4 years ahead of you before you even start getting there." They would exaggerate the length of travel, or just flat out lie about what was in front of them. They're brigands and raiders, and the Romans were terrible peoples and would eat them and stuff like that, just to keep the nations apart. So stuff like that happened. But I'm on a tangent now. I'm on a complete tangent. The map is going to be something that I think is going to lend itself very well to multiplayer gameplay. I think it's going to be extremely interesting because it did say in the Dev Diary that provinces were areas that were fully controlled by one nation. So it definitely seems like you need to control every city in that province to kind of get that governor, maybe to get a boon to be able to fully utilize it, or to fully utilize all of its trade goods or something like that. It's definitely going to be that kind of I need to control all of this. You've got that one city right there. I need that one city kind of gameplay coming into our future here. So that's about it for today's Dev Diary. It's much longer. I ranted a lot more than in the first one. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Every Monday there's going to be a new Dev Diary out, and there's going to be a new episode of Comet Sighted. If you guys like this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, come back next week for more information, and hopefully in some time in the near future, get some gameplay. I can't wait to get my hands on this game. I'm so excited. I'm doing this whole thing with this huge derpy smile on my face right now. But anywho, thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.